You're sprawled on your couch, the kind of evening where the world feels soft at the edges, like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. The hum of your fridge is the only sound, a modern-day cricket chirping in the distance. You close your eyes, and the air shifts cooler now, damp, with the faint tang of wood smoke and something musty, like old paper left in an attic. You're not on your couch anymore. You're standing in a narrow alley in 14th century Oxford. The cobbles slick under your boots. The sky a bruised, gray, threatening rain. You probably wanted to make it through this day without smudging your clothes with ink or tripping over a stray goose. Welcome to tonight's tale, where medieval bookbinders wield secret inks and whisper spells to make books that feel alive. If you enjoy this sleepy journey, give it a like, maybe subscribe for more. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you re-drifting off from. Now let's ease into the night's journey. You shuffle forward, your cloak brushing against the stone walls of the alley. The air is thick with the scent of parchment and leather, and somewhere nearby, a hammer taps rhythmically, like a heartbeat. You're heading toward a workshop tucked behind a tavern, where bookbinders craft manuscripts that monks and scholars will guard like treasures. This is no Amazon warehouse churning out paperbacks. Each book here takes months, sometimes years, to birth. You pause at a wooden door. Its iron hinges rusted but sturdy, and push it open. Inside, the workshop is dim, lit by flickering tallow candles that smell faintly of sheep fat. Shelves grown under stacks of vellum calfskin scraped so thin it's almost translucent, like medieval cling wrap. You squint at a table where a binder, a wiry man with ink-stained fingers, hunches over a half-finished book. His name's Thomas, though you don't know that yet. He's muttering something under his breath, words you can't quite catch, like a radio stuck between stations. Here's the first big fact to tuck into your sleepy brain. By the 1300s, bookbinding had become a specialized trade in Europe, distinct from scribal work. Monks still copied texts in monasteries, but urban workshops like this one were popping up, catering to universities and wealthy patrons. Thomas isn't just slapping pages together. He's an artisan, part carpenter, part chemist, part magician. You watch him drizzle a dark liquid onto a page, and the ink vanishes into the vellum like it's been swallowed. Secret ink, they call it, made from gallnuts and iron salts, invisible until heated or treated. Spies and scholars love this stuff, hiding messages in plain sight. You lean closer, and Thomas glares at you, his eyes sharp as a cat's. Mind your step, he snaps, or you'll ruin a month's work. You back off, nearly knocking over a pot of glue that smells like boiled hooves. Charming. Here's a weird tidbit. Some binders believe their tools had personalities. That all on Thomas's table? He calls it Agnes, claims it sings when it pierces leather just right. You raise an eyebrow, but he's dead serious, stroking the awl like it's a pet. Historians still debate whether these whispered spells and named tools were genuine superstition or just trade secrets dressed up as mysticism. You're not sure either, but the way Thomas mutters to Agnes makes you wonder if she's listening. You wander to a corner where a stack of unfinished pages waits, each one hand-stitched with linen thread. It's slow work, like knitting a sweater for a king who'll never say thanks. You notice a faint glow from one page, a trick of the candlelight, or is it? Thomas catches you staring and smirks, like he knows something you don't. Books have souls, he says, if you treat them right. You roll your eyes, but there's a chill down your spine, like you've just stepped on a crack in the universe. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the shutters, and you feel the weight of the day settling into your bones. It's not just a workshop. It's a place where secrets are bound into every page, and you're already tangled in them. You stifle a yawn, the kind that makes your jaw creak like an old door. Don't fall asleep on me, Thomas says, tossing you a rag to wipe ink off your hands. You didn't even notice you touched anything. Typical. You glance at the door, wondering if you should leave. But the alley outside feels less inviting now, like it's grown teeth. You're stuck here, at least for a while, watching Thomas work his quiet magic. The candles flicker, and the world feels smaller, cozier, like a blanket pulled tight. You settle onto a stool, the wood creaking under you, and let the rhythm of Thomas's hammer lull you deeper into this strange, inky world. You're still in Thomas's workshop, the air heavy with the scent of leather and wax, like a library that's been sealed for centuries. The stool you're perched on wobbles like it's plotting your downfall, and you grip the edge to stay upright. Thomas is at his table, stitching pages with a needle that glints in the candlelight, his fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon or maybe a pickpocket. You're half convinced he could steal your wallet and bind it into a book before you noticed. Outside, the Oxford alley is quiet now, the wind having spent its tantrum, leaving only the occasional clatter of a cartwheel or the distant bark of a dog. You're not going anywhere, not yet. The workshop feels like a trap, but a warm one, like a Netflix binge you can't quit. You watch Thomas fold a sheet of vellum, creasing it with a bone folder that looks suspiciously like a femur. He's working on a psalter, a prayer book for some rich cleric who probably can't read half of it. Here's your big fact for this section. In the 14th century, the rise of universities like Oxford and Paris fueled a boom in book production. Students needed textbooks and professors needed references, so binders like Thomas were suddenly in demand, churning out everything from Aristotle to astrology charts. It's like the medieval equivalent of a college bookstore, except instead of overpriced paperbacks, you're dropping a year's wages on a single volume. You wince at the thought, but Thomas doesn't seem fazed, humming a tune that sounds vaguely like a pub song you heard earlier. You lean forward, trying to catch the words he's muttering as he works. They're not English Latin, maybe, or something older. It's hard to tell, like trying to eavesdrop on a dream. Here's the obscure tidbit. Some bookbinders used cursing tablets, thin lead sheets inscribed with protective spells, tucked into book covers to ward off thieves or bad luck. You spot a glint of metal under a stack of leather scraps and wonder if Thomas has one hidden there, etched with words to hex anyone who dares nick his work. Historians still debate whether these tablets were common or just a quirky habit of a few paranoid artisans. You're betting on paranoid Thomas. Seems like the type to curse a book thief into next week. You shift on the stool, and it creaks louder, drawing Thomas's glare. You're worse than a monk with fleas, he mutters, but there's a flicker of amusement in his eyes. You grin, caught, and glance around the workshop. Remember the alley you walked through earlier? Its memory lingers, like a damp chill in your cloak. You notice a small window above Thomas's table, smeared with grime, and through it, you catch a glimpse of that same alley, now bathed in moonlight. It looks different, narrower, almost alive, like it's watching you back. You shake off the thought, blaming the late hour and the flickering candles. Thomas pauses, dipping his quill into a pot of that secret ink you saw earlier. He writes something on a scrap of vellum, then holds it over a candle. The words appear, dark and sharp, like they've clawed their way out of the page. For the client, he says, catching your stare. He likes his secrets. You nod, pretending you understand, but your mind's wandering to modern parallels, like how your phone as passcode is your own secret ink, guarding text you'd rather not explain. You chuckle at the thought, and Thomas raises an eyebrow. "What's so funny?" he asks. You shrug, muttering something about medieval encryption, and he snorts, like you're the weird one here. You stretch, your back complaining from the stool's betrayal, and wander to a shelf where a half-bound book sits, its wooden boards exposed like ribs. You touch it, and it's warm, like it's been basking in sunlight. Weird. Thomas notices and smirks again. That same knowing look. "Careful," he says. "That one's got a temper." You laugh, but it's a nervous laugh, like when your GPS tells you to turn into a lake. The workshop feels smaller now, the walls leaning in and you wonder how long you've been here. Hours? Days? Time's getting slippery, like ink on wet vellum. You settle back on the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady stitching pull you deeper into this world, where books aren't just objects. They're secrets, spells, and maybe something more. You're still perched on that traitorous stool in Thomas's workshop, its wobble daring you to lose your balance like a drunk at a fair. The air is thick with the scent of wax and old leather, and the candles have burned lower, casting shadows that flicker like they're gossiping about you. Thomas is across the room, sanding a wooden book cover with a rhythm that's almost hypnotic, like a Spotify playlist stuck on repeat. You rub your eyes, trying to shake the drowsiness that's creeping in. But this place has a way of making time feel like molasses, slow and sticky. You're not sure if you were trapped in a dream or just Oxford's most boring time loop. Either way, you're not leaving yet, so you might as well settle in. You watch Thomas carve a faint pattern into the wood, a swirl of leaves that looks like it belongs on a cathedral door. He's not just making a book. He's crafting a legacy, something that'll outlive him by centuries. Here's your big historical fact. By the 14th century, bookbinding had evolved to include decorative elements like blind tooling, where artisans press patterns into leather covers using heated metal stamps. It's like medieval Instagram. Each book had to flex its owner's wealth and taste. Thomas's client, some pompous scholar, probably wants his psalter to scream, "I'm richer than you," to anyone who sees it. You can't help but smirk, imagining him showing it off like it's a new iPhone. You notice a small clay pot on the table, filled with a greenish paste that smells like crushed herbs and regret. Thomas dips a brush into it, painting the edges of the pages. This is your obscure tidbit. Some bookbinders use verdigris, a toxic green pigment made from copper, to decorate page edges or illuminate manuscripts. It was stunning but deadly, like a medieval influencer chasing clout with poison makeup. You wince, hoping Thomas isn't breathing too deeply. Historians still debate whether Binder's new verdigris was toxic or just shrugged off the occasional dead colleague as bad luck. You're betting on the latter. Thomas doesn't strike you as a safety-first kind of guy. You shift on the stool, and it groans like it's personally offended. "Stop fidgeting," Thomas mutters, not looking up. You're worse than a scribe with a hangover. You chuckle, but there's a flicker of unease as you glance at the window. Remember that alley from earlier? The one that felt like it was watching you? It's back, visible through the grime-streaked glass, and now it's bathed in a weird silvery light, like the moon's turned up its brightness. You blink, and for a second, you swear you see a figure standing there, a silhouette, gone before you can focus. Your heart skips, but you tell yourself it's just the candles playing tricks. Still, you're not loving how this workshop feels like it's holding its breath. Thomas catches your unease and grins, his teeth stained with ink or maybe just bad luck. "Nervous?" he asked, pointing his brush at you like it's a wand. Books don't bite, but they do talk if you listen. You roll your eyes, but his words stick, like a pop song you can't unhear. You wander to a shelf where a stack of vellum sheets waits, each one marked with faint scratches, task scribbles maybe, or secret codes. You trace one with your finger, and it feels alive, like it's humming under your touch. "Don't touch that," Thomas snaps, and you jump, nearly knocking over a candle. Smooth move. You mutter an apology, but he's already back to his carving, muttering his strange, not quite Latin again. You were starting to think those whispers aren't just for show. They re part of the craft, like Wi-Fi for wizards. The workshop hums along, and you sink deeper into its rhythm, the world outside fading like a bad signal. You're still in the workshop, the air now so thick with the smell of ink and wood shavings. It's like you're swimming in a library's daydream. The candles are stubs now, spitting tiny sparks that make you flinch, like miniature fireworks with a grudge. Thomas is hunched over a new task, sewing a book's spine with a needle that looks too big for the job. like he's stitching a dragon's hide. You're still on that cursed stool, which you're now convinced is plotting your demise, probably in cahoots with the alley outside. You stretch, your joints popping like bubble wrap, and wonder how long you've been here. Hours? Weeks? Time in this workshop is like a Wi-Fi signal in a storm, unreliable and faintly mocking. Thomas's needle flashes in the candlelight, threading linen through vellum with a precision that's almost annoying. Here's your historical fact. The Codex, the book format we know today with pages bound between covers, had largely replaced scrolls by the 14th century in Europe. It was a game-changer, easier to store, flip through, and hide from nosy monks. Think of it as the medieval Kindle, except you couldn't download a new one when your dog chewed it. Thomas's Codex is a beauty. Its pages so even you'd swear he used a ruler. You lean closer, and he doesn't snap at you this time, too focused on his work. His muttering's back though, those strange words that sound like a spell or maybe just a really bad poem. You spot something odd on his table. A tiny glass vial filled with a milky liquid, stoppered with a cork no bigger than your thumbnail. This is your weird tidbit. Some bookbinders use milk of the moon, a concoction of chalk and water, to whiten vellum or correct mistakes. It was like medieval whiteout, but fancier, and probably tasted worse. You imagine Thomas dabbing it on a smudged page, cursing under his breath like a barista fixing a botched latte. Historians still debate whether this milk was purely practical or if binders thought it had mystical properties, like a potion to make books glow under moonlight. You're skeptical, but the way Thomas handles that vial, with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics, makes you wonder. You glance at the window again, half expecting that creepy alley to be staring back. It's still there, of course, but now it's pitch black, like someone turned off the moon. Remember that silhouette you thought you saw? You're trying not to think about it, but your brain's like a toddler with a flashlight, shining it on every spooky detail. You look like you've seen a ghost, Thomas says, not looking up from his stitching. You laugh, but it's thin, like decaf coffee. Just tired. You mumble, but he smirks, like he knows you're lying. Books keep secrets, he says, and so do alleys. Great. Now you're wondering if he's in on whatever's lurking out there. You stand, needing to move before the stool wins its war against you. You wander to a corner where a finished book rests, its leather cover embossed with a cross that looks more like a warning than a blessing. You touch it, and it's cold, like it's been waiting in a crypt. Thomas doesn't stop you this time, but his muttering gets louder, and you catch a word protego, maybe? You're no Latin scholar, but it sounds like he's warding off something. Or someone. The workshop feels tighter now, like it's squeezing you, and the candle's flicker is less cozy, more like a warning. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady needlework pull you back into this strange, inky world where every page feels like a door to somewhere else. You're still stuck in Thomas's workshop, the air now so heavy with the scent of tallow and damp vellum it feels like you rebreathing through a library's laundry basket. The candles are barely clinging to life, their flames twitching like they're auditioning for a ghost story. You're on that wretched stool again, which you're now certain is cursed, probably by some medieval Achaea ancestor with a grudge. Thomas is across the room, burnishing a leather book cover with a smooth stone, his movements slow and deliberate, like he's petting a cat that might bite. You yawn, your jaw creaking like a rusty gate, and wonder if you'll ever escape this place. It's like being trapped in a Zoom meeting with no mute button, just you, Thomas, and the endless hum of his work. You watch him rub the leather until it gleams, catching the candlelight like a dark mirror. Here's your historical fact. In the 14th century, bookbinders often used oak-tanned leather for covers, which was durable but required hours of polishing to look fancy enough for a noble shelf. It's like the medieval equivalent of waxing a sports car tedious, but the shine was worth it. This book's destined for a bishop. Thomas mutters, someone who'll probably use it more as a status symbol than a prayer aid. You can't help but grin, picturing the bishop flashing it like a medieval TikTok flex. Thomas catches your smirk and snorts. "Laugh all you want," he says, "but this pays for my ale." You notice a small wooden box on his table, carved with knots that look like eyes. He opens it, revealing a pile of tiny brass fittings, clasps, and corner guards for the book. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders believe these fittings held protective charms, etched with symbols to keep the book's contents safe from prying eyes or evil spirits. It's like putting a medieval VPN on your manuscript. You squint at a clasp, wondering if it's just decoration or if Thomas really thinks it'll zap a thief. Historians still debate whether these charms were symbolic or if binders like Thomas genuinely believed in their power. You're leaning towards superstition. This guy names his tools after all. You shift on the stool, and it groans like it's filing a formal complaint. "You're gonna break that," Thomas says, not looking up. "Then you're paying for it." You roll your eyes, but your gaze drifts to that window again. Remember that alley? The one that went dark like someone flipped a switch? It's back, and now there's a faint glow out there, like a lantern bobbing in the distance. You blink, and it's gone, leaving you wondering if you're re-seeing things or if Oxford's alleys are just messing with you. Your stomach twists, like you've eaten one too many gas station tacos. "You all right?" Thomas asks, his tone more curious than concerned. You nod, but you're not sure you believe yourself. You stand, needing to shake off the creepiness, and wander to a shelf where a stack of half-finished pages sits. You spot one with a faint watermark, a unicorn, of all things, pressed into the vellum. It's oddly charming, like finding an emoji in a spreadsheet. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't yell, which feels like a minor victory. His burnishing stone scrapes softly, and you catch him whispering again, words that sound like salve or maybe salva. You're no linguist, but it feels like he's coaxing the book to behave. The workshop's warmth wraps around you, and despite the alley's tricks, you sink back onto the stool, letting Thomas's steady rhythm lull you deeper into this world of secrets and leather. You're still in the workshop, the air now so thick with the smell of glue and wood smoke, it is like you re-trapped in a medieval craft store. The candles are dead now, replaced by a single oil lamp that sputters like it's got a personal vendetta. You're back on that stool, which you're now convinced is sentient and hates you specifically. Thomas is at his table, attaching those brass clasps from earlier, each one clicking into place with a sound like a tiny lock snapping shut. You rub your temples, feeling time slip like a bad Wi-Fi connection, and wonder if you'll ever see daylight again. This place is less a workshop and more a time vortex with a side of sarcasm. You watch Thomas adjust a clasp, his fingers nimble despite the calluses. Here's your historical fact. By the 14th century, books were often secured with metal clasps or straps to protect their pages from warping, especially in damp climates like England. It's like medieval shrink wrap, keeping the vellum tight and tidy. This book's clasps are ornate, probably for that bishop who loves showing off. You imagine him unclasping it dramatically, like he's opening a treasure chest in a D&D campaign. Thomas mutters something about fancy fools, and you stifle a laugh, suspecting he's not a fan of his client either. You spot a strange tool on his table, a curved blade with a handle wrapped in frayed cloth. This is your weird tidbit. Some bookbinders used flensing knives, originally for skinning animals, to trim vellum to perfect edges. It's like using a butcher's cleaver to cut wrapping paper overkill, but effective. You shudder, picturing Thomas wielding it with the same care he gives his all, Agnes. Historians still debate whether these knives were standard or just a quirky choice for binders who like multitasking as butchers. You're hoping Thomas sticks to books and leaves the sheep alone. You glance at the window, half expecting that alley to pull another disappearing act. It's still there, but now there's a faint mist curling through it, like the set of a low-budget horror flick. Remember that glowing lantern you thought you saw? You're trying not to obsess, but it's like your brain stuck on a creepy Reddit thread. You keep staring out there, Thomas says, snapping a clasp shut. Expecting a dragon? You force a laugh, but it's weak, like decaf trying to pass for espresso. Just curious, you say, but he smirks, like he knows you're spooked. Curiosity's dangerous, he says, especially around books. You stand, your legs stiff from the stool's torture, and wander to a corner where a finished book rests, its clasps gleaming like tiny shields. You touch one, and it's warm, like it's been sitting by a fire. Weird. Thomas doesn't stop you, but his whispering picks up, and you catch a phrase custodia, maybe? It sounds like he's guarding something, or asking the book to guard itself. You're starting to think these spells are less about magic and more about focus, like a medieval Pomodoro technique. The lamp flickers, casting shadows that dance like they're mocking you, and the workshop feels smaller, like it's closing in. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady clicks pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a puzzle with a missing piece. You're still slouched in Thomas's workshop, the air now so dense with the scent of linseed oil and old parchment. It's like you re-trapped in a museum gift shop with no exit. The oil lamp sputters on, its flame wobbling like it's had one too many ales. That wretched stool is still your nemesis, creaking every time you shift, as if it's auditioning for a haunted house. Thomas is at his table, applying a thin layer of wax to a book's leather cover, his hands moving with the steady grace of someone defusing a bomb, or maybe just a guy who's done this 1,000 times. You rub your eyes, feeling like you've been here for eons, and wonder if time's just given up on you. This place is less a workshop and more a cozy purgatory with a side of dry humor. You watch Thomas smooth the wax with a cloth, the leather gleaming like it's ready for its close-up in a medieval blockbuster. Here's your historical fact. In the 14th century, bookbinders often applied wax or resin to leather covers to protect them from moisture and wear, especially in England's soggy climate. It's like medieval Scotchgard, keeping the book pristine for scholars who'd probably spill wine on it anyway. This one's for that bishop, Thomas grumbles, who's apparently pickier than a reality TV judge. You smirk, imagining the bishop inspecting it like he's on a medieval version of Antiques Roadshow. Thomas catches your grin and mutters, "Laugh now, but his gold's what keeps me fed." You notice a small clay jar on the table, filled with a gritty paste that smells like chalk and despair. He dips a finger in, rubbing it into the leather's edges. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders use pounce, a mix of powdered chalk or sand, to prepare vellum for writing or to smooth leather. It's like medieval sandpaper, but fancier, and probably got everywhere like glitter at a craft party. You imagine Thomas sneezing clouds of it, cursing his life choices. Historians still debate whether pounce was just practical or if it had symbolic meaning, like purifying the book for sacred texts. You're betting on practicality, Thomas, doesn't seem like the type for extra mysticism unless it pays. You shift, and the stool lets out a groan that could wake a coma patient. "You're gonna splinter then," Thomas says, not looking up. Then you're sweeping the mess. You chuckle, but your eyes drift to that window again. Remember that alley? The one with the creepy mist? It's back, and now it's so foggy you can barely see the cobbles, like the world's been smudged with an eraser. You squint, half expecting that lantern glow from earlier, but it's just gray nothingness. Your skin prickles, like you've scrolled too far into a creepy subreddit. "You're jumpy," Thomas says, smirking. "City's full of shadows, best not to chase 'em." You nod, but your gut's telling you that alley's up to no good. You stand, needing to move before the stool claims your soul, and wander to a shelf where a stack of vellum scraps lies, some scribbled with half-finished letters. You spot one with a tiny drawing of a dragon, no bigger than your thumb, curled around the letter B. It's cute, like a medieval doodle in a planner. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't bark at you, which feels like progress. His waxing cloth swishes softly, and you catch his muttering against sigillum, maybe. It sounds like he's sealing something, or asking the book to stay shut. The workshop's warmth pulls you in, and despite the alley's eerie vibes, you sink back onto the stool, letting Thomas's steady rhythm drag you deeper into this inky, waxy world. You're still in the workshop, the air now so thick with the smell of wax and charred wick. It's like you, re-stuck in a candle shop during a power outage. The oil lamp's flame is steadier now, but it's casting shadows that dance like they're mocking your life choices. You're back on that demonic stool, which you're now sure is cursed by some medieval prankster god. Thomas is at his table, attaching a ribbon marker to the book's spine, his fingers threading silk through vellum with the precision of a watchmaker, or maybe a spider spinning a web. You stretch, your back cracking like a glow stick, and wonder if he'll ever escape this time warp. It's like being stuck in a historical drama with no fast-forward button. You watch Thomas tie the ribbon, a deep crimson strip that looks too fancy for a prayer book. Here's your historical fact. By the 14th century, bookbinders often added ribbon markers or tabs to help readers navigate manuscripts, especially religious texts used in daily prayers. It's like medieval bookmarks, but classier, saving monks from dog-earing pages and eternal guilt. This ribbon's for the bishop, who probably needs all the help he can get to find the right psalm. You picture him fumbling with it, muttering about his failing eyesight and grin. Thomas glances up and snorts. "You find my misery amusing?" he asks. "Wait till you meet his grace." You laugh, but it's a nervous laugh, like you've just agreed to pet a stray dog that might bite. You spot a small metal disc on the table, etched with a cross and some squiggly lines. Thomas picks it up, pressing it into the book's cover. This is your weird tidbit. Some binders used bosses, metal studs or discs, to reinforce book corners or add bling, but a few believed they repelled bad spirits. It's like sticking a garlic clove on your Kindle to ward off hackers. You wonder if Thomas buys into this, or if he's just humoring his superstitious clients. Historians still debate whether bosses were purely decorative, or if they carried spiritual weight in a world obsessed with protection. You're leaning toward decoration. Thomas seems too pragmatic for ghost-busting hardware. You glance at the window, bracing for another alley scare. It's still foggy out there, but now there's a faint tapping, like rain or maybe footsteps. Remember that creepy mist? It's thicker now, swirling like it's got plans. You swallow. Your throat dry as a bad meme. "You hear that?" you asked, trying to sound casual. Thomas pauses, cocking his head, then shrugs. "Oxford's full of noises," he says. "That's not to listen too hard." You nod, but your heart's doing a little tap dance, like it's auditioning for a thriller. You're starting to think that alley's not just a street, it's a character, and it's not here to make friends. You stand, your legs wobbly from the stool's reign of terror, and wander to a corner where a finished book sits, its ribbon dangling like a tease. You touch it, and it's soft, like it's been loved already. Thomas doesn't stop you, but his muttering picks up. "Claudier, maybe?" It sounds like he's telling the book to stay closed, or maybe just venting about his workload. You're starting to think these whispers are his version of stress baking, a way to keep sane in this endless craft. The lamp's glow softens, and the workshop feels tighter, like it's hugging you a little too hard. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady ribbon tying pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a secret you're not supposed to know. You're still holed up in Thomas's workshop, the air now so heavy with the scent of molten wax and musty vellum, it feels like you rebreathing the ghost of a library. The oil lamp flickers, casting shadows that skitter across the walls like they're late for a meeting. That infernal stool is still your foe, groaning with every twitch like it's got a personal vendetta. Thomas is at his table, tooling a pattern into the book's leather cover with a metal stamp. His movements precise but weary, like a barista on the 5th hour of a double shift. You rub your neck, stiff from sitting too long, and wonder if you're destined to fossilize here. This place is less a workshop and more a time capsule with a sarcastic streak. You watch Thomas press the stamp, a floral knot that blooms under his hand like a medieval tattoo. Here's your historical fact. In the 14th century, line tooling pressing heated metal stamps into leather to create patterns became a hallmark of high-end bookbinding, especially for religious texts. It's like medieval branding, making sure everyone knows this book's too fancy for peasants. This one's for that bishop, who Thomas says wants something to impress the cathedral crowd. You picture the bishop waving it around like it's a limited edition sneaker drop, and you stifle a chuckle. Thomas glances up, eyebrow raised. "What's so funny?" he asks. You try making art for a man who thinks he's God's cousin. You grin, but wisely keep quiet. You spot a small vial on the table, filled with a dark, syrupy liquid that catches the lamplight like ink with a secret. Thomas dips a quill in it, testing it on a scrap of vellum. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders used oak gall ink mixed with wine or vinegar to create invisible annotations, visible only under certain lights or treatments. It's like medieval two-factor authentication. Only the right reader gets the message. You imagine Thomas scribbling coded notes to mess with future scholars. Historians still debate whether these hidden marks were for practical notes or secretive messages, like a medieval DM slid into a manuscript. You're betting on secrets. Thomas has that sneaky vibe. You shift, and the stool lets out a creak that could wake a hibernating bear. "You're gonna break my shop," Thomas mutters, not looking up. Then you're mopping the floor. You laugh, but your eyes flick to the window. Remember that foggy alley, the one with the creepy tapping? It's back, and now the mist is so thick it looks like it's trying to sneak inside. You swear you hear that tapping again, faint but insistent, like someone's testing the lock. Your pulse picks up, like you've just clicked on a phishing link by mistake. "You hear that?" You ask, voice low. Thomas pauses, tilts his head, then shrugs. "Probably just rats," he says, "or your imagination." You're not convinced, but you don't press it mostly because you're not sure you want the answer. You stand, your knees protesting like they're unionizing, and wander to a shelf where a half-bound book sits, its spine exposed like a skeleton. You spot a faint scratch on the wood, a rune, maybe, or just a bored doodle. It's oddly soothing, like finding a sticky note in a textbook. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't snap, which feels like a small miracle. His stamping rhythm hums along, and you catch his muttering again, "Lumen, maybe?" It sounds like he's asking for light, or maybe just grumbling about the lamp. The workshop's glow wraps you up, and despite the alley's eerie antics, you sink back onto the stool, letting Thomas's steady work pull you deeper into this world of secrets and stamps. You're still in the workshop, the air now so thick with the smell of charred wood and sour ink, it's like you restuck in a medieval art supply closet. The oil lamp's holding steady, but its light feels thin, like it's rationing itself for the long haul. That cursed stool is still your tormentor, creaking like it's laughing at your discomfort. Thomas is at his table, attaching a final brass boss to the book's cover. Each tap of his hammer sharp and final, like he's nailing a coffin shut. You stretch, your spine popping like popcorn, and wonder if you'll ever see the outside world again. This place is like a Netflix series you can't quit, even though it's starting to feel like a trap. You watch Thomas secure the boss, its cross and squiggle design glinting like it's winking at you. Here's your historical fact. By the mid-14th century, books were increasingly portable, designed for personal use rather than chained to monastery desks, thanks to tighter binding techniques and lighter materials. It's like the medieval shift from desktop PCs to laptops suddenly. You could carry your psalter to church without a wheelbarrow. This book's compact, perfect for the bishop to lug around while preaching about humility. You smirk, imagining him tripping over his robes while clutching it. Thomas catches your look and snorts. You'd laugh less if you had to deal with his sermons, he says. You nod, but you're already picturing the bishop's ego needing its own binding. You notice a small cloth bundle on the table, tied with a cord. Thomas unties it, revealing a set of tiny bone tools awls, folders, and something that looks like a miniature spatula. This is your weird tidbit. Some binders use bone tools carved from animal remains, believing they carried. Ascertain the nature of this belief, whether it was practical or tied to some ritualistic idea about transferring the animal. Strength to the book is still debated by historians. You're leaning toward ritual, given Thomas's obsession with his awl, Agnes. You imagine him whispering to these tools too, like they're his backup band. It's creepy but oddly endearing, like naming your Roomba. You shift, and the stool screeches like it's auditioning for a horror flick. You're testing my patience, Thomas grumbles, securing another boss with a tap. You grin, but your eyes dart to the window. That alley's still out there. The fog now so dense it's like the world's been dunked in milk. The tapping's gone, but you swear you see a shadow move quick, like a cat dodging a bath. Your heart does a little jig, like you've just seen a jump scare on YouTube. You're pale, Thomas says, glancing up. Too much ale last night? You force a laugh, but it's thin, like watered-down tea. Just cold, you mutter, but you're not fooling anyone, especially not that alley. You stand, your legs wobbly as a newborn foal, and shuffle to a corner where a stack of finished books sits, their bosses gleaming like tiny medals. You touch one, and it's cool, like it's been chilling in a fridge. Thomas doesn't bark, but his muttering picks up Finis, maybe? It sounds like he's wrapping up the book or his sanity. You're starting to think these whispers are just his way of staying focused, like humming a tune during a long drive. The lamp's light dims, and the workshop feels tighter, like it's trying to hug you into submission. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its taunts, and let Thomas's hammer taps pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a locked box you're not sure you want to open. You're still marooned in Thomas's workshop, the air now so thick with the scent of beeswax and sour vellum. It is like you restewing in a medieval candle factory. The oil lamp's flame is a stubborn little thing, flickering like it's daring the darkness to try something. That demonic stool is still your archenemy, creaking with every breath you take, as if it's got a personal grudge against your spine. Thomas is at his table, stitching a final thread through the book's spine, his fingers moving with the weary precision of a chef plating a dish after a 12-hour shift. You rub your temples, feeling like you've been here since the Magna Carta was a rough draft, and wonder if you'll ever escape. This place is like a historical reenactment you signed up for on a whim, only to realize it's a lifetime commitment. You watch Thomas pull the thread taut, the book's spine tightening like it's flexing for a photo shoot. Here's your historical fact. By the late 14th century, bookbinders had developed raised band sewing, where cords were laced across the spine to create ridges that added strength and a decorative effect. It's like medieval rebar, making books tough enough to survive a scholar's tantrum or a monastery flood. This book's for that bishop, who Thomas mutters is more fond of pomp than psalms. You grin, picturing the bishop waving it like a peacock flashing its tail. Thomas catches your smirk and rolls his eyes. Laugh now, he says, but his coin's what keeps my fire lit. You nod, but you're already imagining the bishop tripping over his ego while clutching this masterpiece. You spot a small wooden tray on the table, holding a pile of colored threads, red, blue, and a green that looks like it was stolen from a forest. Thomas picks a blue one, threading it through the book's headband. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders wove multicolored silk headbands not just for decoration, but to signal a book's purpose, like a medieval genre tag red for theology, blue for law, green for herbals. It's like color-coding your Google Docs, but with more flair. You wonder if Thomas picked blue to match the bishop's robes, or just because it was handy. Historians still debate whether these colors followed strict rules or were just artisanal whims. You're betting on whims Thomas doesn't strike you as a rule follower. You shift, and the stool lets out a screech that could summon a banshee. "You're gonna owe me a new one," Thomas grumbles, not looking up. You chuckle, but your eyes flick to the window. Remember that foggy alley, the one that's been playing hide-and-seek with your sanity? It's back, the mist now so thick it's like the world's been wrapped in cotton. You swear you see a flicker out there, not a lantern, but something sharper, like a blade catching light. Your stomach lurches, like you've just scrolled past a spoiler for your favorite show. "You're twitchy," Thomas says, glancing up. "City's got its tricks, best not to stare." You nod, but your pulse is doing a little sprint, like it's late for a deadline. You stand, your joints creaking louder than the stool, and shuffle to a shelf where a stack of vellum sheets waits, one marked with a faint sketch of a bird. It's delicate, like a doodle in a meeting agenda, and you smile despite the alley's creepy vibes. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't bark, which feels like a truce. His needle hums along, and you catch his muttering again vinculum, maybe? It sounds like he's binding something, or maybe just complaining about his workload. The workshop's warmth pulls you in, and despite the alley's mind games, you sink back onto the stool, letting Thomas's steady stitching drag you deeper into this world of threads and secrets. You're still trapped in the workshop, the air now so heavy with the smell of singed leather and stale ink, it is like you re-drowning in a medieval print shop. Ass dumpster. The oil lamp's flame is steady but dim, like it's rationing its glow for a siege. That cursed stool is still your tormentor, groaning like it's got a side hustle as a poltergeist. Thomas is at his table, polishing the book's brass clasps with a rag, each swipe revealing a shine that could blind a monk. You stretch, your back snapping like a bundle of twigs, and wonder if you'll ever see sunlight again. This place is like a podcast you can't pause, dragging you deeper into its droning charm. You watch Thomas buff the clasps, their crosses and squiggles gleaming like they're ready for a red carpet debut. Here's your historical fact. In the 14th century, brass fittings like clasps and bosses were often hand-forged by binders themselves, doubling as both protection and status symbols. It's like medieval bling screaming, "This book's worth more than your house." This one's for the bishop, who Thomas says wants it shinier than his soul. You smirk, picturing the bishop preening over it like it's a Grammy Award. Thomas catches your grin and snorts. "You'd laugh less if you had to polish his ego too," he says. You laugh, but it's a bit forced, like you're humoring a bad dad joke. You notice a small leather pouch on the table, tied with a thong and bulging with something lumpy. Thomas opens it, spilling out a handful of tiny glass beads. This is your weird. Some binders sew beads or semi-precious stones into book covers as talismans, believing they protect the text from harm or theft. It's like sticking a lucky charm on your laptop case, but with more mysticism. You wonder if Thomas believes in their power or just likes the extra coin for the effort. Historians still debate whether these beads were purely decorative or tied to spiritual beliefs about safeguarding knowledge. You're leaning toward profit. Thomas has a hustler's glint in his eye. You glance at the window, bracing for another alley scare. The fog's still there, thick as porridge, but now there's a faint hum, like a tuning fork struck far away. Remember that blade-like flicker you saw? You're trying not to obsess, but it's like your brain stuck on a glitchy horror trailer. You hear that? You ask, voice barely above a whisper. Thomas pauses, rag mid-swipe, then shrugs. "Oxford's full of hums," he says. "Best not to chase him." You nod, but your heart's doing a tap dance, like it's auditioning for a heist movie. You restarting to think that alley is not just creepy, it's got its own agenda. You stand, your legs wobbly as a cheap folding chair. and wander to a corner where a finished book rests, its clasps glinting like tiny lighthouses. You touch one, and it's warm, like it's been basking in a sunbeam. Weird. Thomas doesn't stop you, but his muttering picks up Custodia again. It sounds like he's guarding the book, or maybe just his patience. You're starting to think these whispers are his version of white noise, keeping the world at bay. The lamp's glow softens, and the workshop feels smaller, like it's trying to tuck you in. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady polishing pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a vault you're not sure you want to crack. You're still stuck in Thomas's workshop, the air now so dense with the scent of linseed oil and damp leather. It is like you re-wading through a medieval stationery store after a flood. The oil lamp's flame is a faint glow, barely holding its own against the shadows creeping in like uninvited guests. That cursed stool is still your nemesis, creaking with every shift like it's narrating your discomfort to the room. Thomas is at his table, brushing a thin layer of gilding onto the book's foredge, his strokes careful but tired, like a painter touching up a mural at midnight. You rub your eyes, feeling like you've been here since the Black Death was just a rumor, and wonder if you'll ever see the outside world again. This place is like a documentary you can't turn off, droning on with just enough charm to keep you hooked. You watch Thomas apply the gold leaf, its shimmer catching the lamplight like a tiny sunrise. Here's your historical fact. By the late 14th century, gilding book edges with gold leaf became a luxury feature, especially for religious texts, signaling wealth and devotion. It is like medieval flexing your book, as edges had to sparkle brighter than your neighbors. This one's for the bishop, who Thomas mutters wants it to blind the congregation. You smirk, imagining the bishop tilting the book to catch the light during a sermon, like he's showing off a new Rolex. Thomas catches your grin and huffs. Laugh all you want, he says, but gold doesn't buy patience. You nod, but you're already picturing the bishop dazzling his flock with this gilded beast. You spot a small clay pot on the table, filled with a sticky, amber resin that smells like pine and regret. Thomas dips a brush into it, sealing the gilding. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders use tree resin, often mixed with frankincense, to fix gold leaf or protect book edges, believing it added a sacred scent to the manuscript. It's like spraying your Kindle with holy air freshener, just in case God's watching. You wonder if Thomas buys the sacred bit or just likes the smell. Historians still debate whether this resin was purely practical or part of a ritual to bless the book. You're leaning toward practicality. Thomas seems more about coin than incense. You shift, and the stool lets out a groan that could wake a crypt. You're gonna owe me a new shop, Thomas mutters, not looking up. You chuckle, but your eyes flick to the window. Remember that foggy alley, the one with the eerie hum? It's back. The mist now so thick it's like staring into a bowl of oatmeal. You swear you hear that hum again, low and steady, like a monk chanting in the distance. Your skin prickles, like you've just opened a creepy DM from an unknown sender. You hear that? You ask, trying to sound nonchalant. Thomas pauses, brush mid-stroke, then shrugs. City's always humming, he says. Best not to listen too close. You nod, but your pulse is doing a little jog, like it's late for a Zoom call. You stand, your knees creaking louder than the stool, and shuffle to a shelf where a stack of vellum sheets sits, one marked with a tiny star scratched into the corner. It's oddly comforting, like finding a sticker on a textbook. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't snap, which feels like a small victory. His brush whispers across the gold, and you catch he's muttering again, Lux, maybe? It sounds like he's calling for light, or maybe just cursing the lamp's dimness. The workshop's warmth wraps around you, and despite the alley's creepy soundtrack, you sink back onto the stool, letting Thomas's steady gilding pull you deeper into this world of gold and secrets. You're still in the workshop, the air now so heavy with the smell of resin and charred vellum, It's like you re-trapped in a medieval apothecary's fever dream. The oil lamp's flame is on its last legs, flickering like it's auditioning for a ghost story. That wretched stool is still your tormentor, creaking like it's got a side gig as a haunted rocking chair. Thomas is at his table, attaching a final ribbon to the book's spine, a green silk strip that looks like it was plucked from a forest. You stretch, your joints popping like a campfire, and wonder if you'll ever escape this time loop. It's like being stuck in a history podcast with no skip button, lulling you deeper into its inky spell. You watch Thomas tie the ribbon, his fingers knotting it with the care of someone wrapping a gift for a picky aunt. Here's your historical fact. In the 14th century, silk ribbons were often added to manuscripts as markers, but they also served as status symbols, dyed in colors only the wealthy could afford. It's like medieval AirPods functional, but mostly a flex. This ribbon's for the bishop, who Thomas says wants everything greener than Eden. You grin, picturing the bishop flaunting it like it's a designer handbag. Thomas catches your smirk and snorts. You'd laugh less if you had to dang the damn thing yourself, he says. You nod, but you're already imagining the bishop tripping over his own vanity while clutching this book. You notice a small wooden box on the table, carved with spirals that look like they're spiraling into nowhere. Thomas opens it, revealing a handful of dried leaves bay, maybe, or laurel. This is your weird tidbit. Some binders tucked herbs into book covers, believing they'd ward off worms or evil spirits. It's like sticking a lavender sachet in your e-reader to keep gremlins away. You wonder if Thomas thinks it works or just does it for the bishop's coin. Historians still debate whether these herbs were practical pest control or part of a mystical tradition to protect the book as soul. You read betting on bugs. Thomas doesn't seem like the type to fuss over spirits unless they pay rent. You glance at the window, bracing for another alley scare. The fog's still there, thick as a bad soup, and that hums back, now joined by a faint rustle, like leaves or whispers. Remember that star you saw scratched on the vellum? It's stuck in your head, like a logo from a dream you can't shake. Your heart skips, like you've just clicked a shady link on a sketchy website. You hear that rustle? You ask, voice barely above a whisper. Thomas pauses, ribbon half-tied, then shrugs. Wind's got stories, he says. Don't go chasing them. You nod, but your gut's telling you that Allie's up to something, and it's not just the wind. You stand, your legs wobbly as a cheap bar stool, and wander to a corner where a finished book rests, its green ribbon dangling like a tease. You touch it, and soft, like it's been stroked by a breeze. Thomas doesn't stop you, but his muttering picks up tutus, maybe. It sounds like he's asking for safety, or maybe just grumbling about the bishop. You're restarting to think these whispers are his way of keeping the world at arm's length, like noise-canceling headphones for the soul. The lamp's light fades, and the workshop feels tighter, like it's trying to tuck you into its story. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady nodding pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a secret you're not sure you're ready to read. You're still tethered to Thomas's workshop, the air now so thick with the scent of warm wax and ancient vellum. It's like you re-drowning in a medieval scribe's daydream. The oil lamp's flame is a frail whisper, barely pushing back the shadows that curl around the room like cats waiting for scraps. That cursed stool, your eternal foe, creaks with every breath, as if it's mocking your decision to stay. Thomas is at his table, finalizing the book's cover with a gentle rub of a cloth, his hands moving with the slow reverence of someone saying goodbye to a friend. You stretch, your spine cracking like a stack of kindling, and wonder if you'll ever break free of this place. It's like being stuck in a history lecture that's oddly soothing, pulling you deeper into its inky embrace. You watch Thomas smooth the leather, its blind-tooled patterns gleaming faintly, like stars peeking through a cloudy sky. Here's your historical fact. By the late 14th century, Bookbinders often inscribed ownership marks or ex libris phrases inside manuscripts to deter theft, a practice that grew as books became valuable commodities. It's like medieval DR scratch your name in, hope no one swipes it. This book's for the bishop, who Thomas says wants his name bigger than the title. You grin, picturing the bishop scrawling his signature like a celebrity signing a fan's poster. Thomas catches your smirk and huffs. Laugh now, he says, but his name's what pays for my bread. You nod, but you're already imagining the bishop's ego needing its own shelf. You spot a small iron stylus on the table, its tip blackened like it's been kissed by fire. Thomas picks it up, scratching a faint mark into the book's flyleaf. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders used curse inscriptions, brief warnings scratched into books to scare off thieves with threats of divine wrath or bad luck. It's like sticking a "steal this and regret it" sticker on your laptop. You wonder if Thomas believes in the curses or just enjoys spooking sticky-fingered monks. Historians still debate whether these inscriptions were serious deterrents or just playful flexes of authority. You're leaning toward play Thomas has a mischievous glint when he scratches that mark. You shift, and the stool lets out a groan that could rattle a crypt. "You're gonna owe me a new life," Thomas mutters, not looking up. You chuckle, but your eyes drift to the window. Remember that foggy alley with its hums and rustles? It's back, the mist now so dense it's like the world's been smothered in wool. You swear you hear a faint scrape, like a boot on cobble, and your skin prickles, like you've just stumbled into a creepy TikTok at 3 AMA. "You hear that?" You ask, voice low. Thomas pauses, stylus mid-scratch, then shrugs. "Oxford's got its ghosts," he says. "Best not to invite him in." You nod, but your heart's doing a little sprint, like it's dodging a deadline. You stand, your legs wobbly as a newborn lamb, and wander to a shelf where a stack of finished books rests, their covers gleaming like quiet promises. You touch one, and it's warm, like it's been basking in a memory. Thomas doesn't stop you, but his muttering picks up parks, maybe. It sounds like he's asking for peace, or maybe just wishing the bishop would chill. You're starting to think these whispers are his lifeline, a soft chant to keep the world's chaos at bay. The workshop's glow fades, and the room feels softer, like it's ready to let you go. Now, let's ease you out of this tale, like slipping into a warm bath after a long day. You settle back onto the stool, its creak now a familiar friend, and let your eyes drift half-closed. The workshop blurs, the edges of shelves and tools softening into a haze, like a painting left in the rain. Thomas's cloth swishes, a gentle rhythm that blends with the distant hum of the alley, now less eerie, more like a lullaby sung by cobblestones. You feel the weight of the day lift, your shoulders loosening as the scent of wax and leather wraps you in a quiet embrace. The world outside Oxford's fog, the bishop's pomp, the alley's secrets fades into a murmur, like waves lapping at a far shore. You're not trapped here, not anymore. You're drifting, carried by the slow pulse of Thomas's work, the books breathing softly around you. Let your thoughts wander, let them scatter like vellum scraps on the workshop floor, and sink into the calm of this moment, where time feels like a river you don't need to cross. Rest now, and let the story hold you, gentle as a whispered spell. You're back in Thomas's workshop, though it feels different now, like you've stepped into a memory of the place rather than the place itself. The air is still heavy, laced with the scent of cooling wax and old wood, but it's softer, like a blanket left by a fire. The oil lamp's gone out, replaced by a faint dawn glow seeping through the window, painting the room in grays and golds. That wretched stool is still here, but its creaks feel less hostile, more like an old dog grumbling in its sleep. Thomas is at his table, wrapping the finished book in a cloth, his movements slow and final, like a chef plating the last dish of the night. You stretch, your body heavy but calm, and wonder if you're finally slipping out of this time loop. It's like waking from a dream you're not quite ready to leave, lulled by its quiet magic. You watch Thomas fold the cloth around the book, tucking it in like it's a child headed to bed. Here's your historical fact. In the 14th century, books were often wrapped in cloth or leather chemises for transport, protecting them from dust and damp during journeys to monasteries or patrons. It's like medieval bubble wrap, keeping the manuscript safe from a world that's not exactly gentle. This book's for the bishop, who Thomas says expects it delivered like it's the Holy Grail. You smirk, picturing the bishop unwrapping it with all the drama of a reality show reveal. Thomas catches your grin and snorts. You'd laugh less if you had to carry it to his manor, he says. You nod, but you're already imagining the bishop fawning over it like it's a viral post. You notice a small leather cord on the table, knotted into a loop with a tiny wooden bead. Thomas ties it around the wrapped book, securing the cloth. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders use knotted cords as bookmarks for patrons. But if you believe the knots held protective charms, tied with specific patterns to ward off misfortune. It's like a medieval friendship bracelet, but with more mysticism. You wonder if Thomas buys into the charm or just does it to humor the bishop. Historians still debate whether these knots were symbolic or genuinely thought to have power, like a talisman against bad luck. You're leaning towards symbolism. Thomas seems too practical for not magic. You shift, and the stool creaks, but it's a soft sound now, almost apologetic. You're still here? Thomas mutters, glancing up. Thought you'd have run off by now. You chuckle, but your eyes drift to the window. Remember that foggy alley with its scrapes and hums? It's clearer now, the mist thinning as dawn creeps in, revealing cobbles slick with dew. You swear you see a shadow slip away, quick as a thought, and your pulse flickers, like you've just glimpsed a typo in an email you already sent. You see that? You ask, voice quiet. Thomas pauses, cord mid-nod, then shrugs. Dawn plays tricks, he says. Best not to chase shadows. You nod, but you're not sure if it was a trick or if the alley is finally done toying with you. You stand, your legs steadier now, and wander to a shelf where a stack of vellum scraps lies, one with a faint crescent moon scratched into it. It's delicate, like a doodle on a napkin, and you smile, feeling the workshop's spell loosen. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't bark, which feels like a farewell. His cloth rustles softly, and you catch his muttering it, or maybe? It sounds like he's talking about a journey, or maybe just ready to move on. You're starting to think these whispers are his way of tying up loose ends, like closing apps on a phone. The dawn's glow warms the room, and the workshop feels lighter, like it's letting you breathe. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady rapping pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a story ready to leave the nest. You're still lingering in Thomas's workshop, the air now softer, laced with the faint scent of drying ink and morning dew, like a library waking up after a long nap. The dawnlight filters through the window, painting the room in muted golds, making the shadows feel less like threats and more like sleepy guests. That cursed stool, your old nemesis, creaks beneath you, but its complaints are quieter now, like it's finally tired of fighting. Thomas is at his table, inspecting the wrapped book with a critical eye, turning it over like a jeweler appraising a gem. You stretch, your joints popping like a soft campfire, and feel the workshop's grip loosening, as if it's ready to let you slip away. This place is like a bedtime story you're reluctant to finish, its rhythm lulling you into a gentle haze. You watch Thomas run his fingers along the book's cloth wrapping, checking for imperfections with the focus of a chef tasting a sauce. Here's your historical fact. By the late 14th century, bookbinders often included fly-leaves blank pages at the start, an end of manuscripts to protect the main text and sometimes to hold owners' notes or prayers. It's like medieval end papers, a buffer for clumsy hands or nosy readers. This book's fly-leaves are for the bishop, who Thomas mutters will probably scribble complaints in them. You grin, imagining the bishop jotting passive-aggressive notes like a Yelp reviewer with a grudge. Thomas catches your smirk and huffs. "Laugh now," he says, "but his whining pays my rent." You nod, but you're already picturing the bishop defacing this masterpiece with his quill. You spot a small metal tin on the table, filled with a grayish powder that smells faintly of ash and earth. Thomas sprinkles a pinch onto the cloth, rubbing it in gently. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders used powdered pumice or ash to clean vellum or cloth, believing it absorbed bad luck as well as stains. It's like medieval dry shampoo, freshening up the book's aura. You wonder if Thomas thinks it really works or if he's just humoring a superstition. Historians still debate whether this practice was about cleanliness or a ritual to purify the book's spirit. You re-leaning toward cleanliness, Thomas doesn't seem like the type to fuss over cosmic vibes without a paycheck. You shift, and the stool lets out a soft creak, more a sigh than a protest. "You're still here?" Thomas says, glancing up with a half-smile. "Thought you'd be halfway to London by now." You chuckle, but your eyes drift to the window. Remember that alley, with its fog and whispers? It's almost clear now, the dawn light revealing cobbles and a stray cartwheel, like the world's hitting the reset button. You swear you see a flicker, a bird, maybe, or just a trick of the light. Your pulse twitches, like you just misread a text from your boss. "You see that?" you ask, keeping your voice steady. Thomas pauses, squinting at the window, then shrugs. "Morning's full of shadows," he says. "Best not to chase them." You nod, but you're not sure if the alley's done playing games. You stand, your legs surprisingly steady, and wander to a shelf where a stack of vellum scraps sits, one with a tiny spiral scratched into it, like a doodle from a bored scribe. It's oddly calming, like finding a sketch in a library book. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't snap, which feels like a quiet farewell. His cloth rustles softly, and you catch his muttering fides, maybe? It sounds like he's talking about trust, or maybe just hoping the bishop doesn't haggle. You're starting to think these whispers are his way of tying up the day, like closing a tab on a browser. The dawn's glow warms the room, and the workshop feels lighter, like it's ready to let you go. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady inspection pull you back into this world of ink and promises. You're still in the workshop, but it feels softer now, like the edges of a dream you're not ready to leave. The air carries the faint scent of polished leather and morning air, crisp and clean, as if Oxford's decided to behave itself. The dawn light spills through the window, bathing the room in a gentle glow that makes the shelves look like they're exhaling. That wretched stool creaks beneath you, but it's more a murmur now, like an old friend grumbling fondly. Thomas is at his table, tying a final cord around the wrapped book, his fingers moving with the calm precision of someone who's done this 1,000 times. You stretch, your body heavy but relaxed, and feel the workshop spell fading, like a song winding down. This place is like a lullaby you didn't know you needed, soothing you into its quiet rhythm. You watch Thomas secure the cord. It's not neat and final, like he's sealing a letter to the future. Here's your historical fact. In the 14th century, Bookbinders often delivered manuscripts in custom wrappings or boxes, tailored to the patron's status to ensure safe transport and impress the recipient. It's like medieval gift wrapping, but with higher stakes. Lose the book, lose your reputation. This one's for the bishop, who Thomas says expects it presented like a royal decree. You smirk, picturing the bishop unwrapping it with all the pomp of a kid opening a Christmas present. Thomas catches your grin and snorts. You'd laugh less if you had to lug it to his doorstep, he says. You nod, but you're already imagining the bishop fumbling the cord like it's a puzzle box. You notice a small clay vial on the table, filled with a clear liquid that smells faintly of lavender. Thomas dabs a drop onto the cloth, rubbing it in. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders anointed wrappings with scented oils. believing they bless the book or keep pests away. It's like spritzing your e-reader with perfume to ward off bad vibes. You wonder if Thomas thinks it's holy or just hates moths. Historians still debate whether these oils were practical or part of a ritual to sanctify the manuscript. You're leaning toward practicality. Thomas seems too grounded for spiritual aromatherapy. You shift, and the stool lets out a soft creak, almost nostalgic now. Still sticking around? Thomas says, tying off the cord with a flourish. You're worse than a stray cat. You chuckle, but your eyes flick to the window. The alley's fully visible now, its cobbles gleaming in the dawn like they've been polished. Remember that flicker you saw? It's gone, replaced by the ordinary bustle of early morning. A cart rolling by, a dog, yapping. Your heart settles, like you've just closed a creepy browser tab. Looks quiet out there, you say, testing the waters. Thomas glances up, smirking. Dawn's the only honest hour, he says. Don't trust it too much. You nod, but you're starting to think the alley's just an alley now. Its mysteries burned off by the sun. You stand, your legs steady as a well-bound book, and wander to a corner where a finished manuscript rests. Its wrapping crisp and clean. You touch it, and it's cool, like it's ready to leave home. Thomas doesn't stop you, but his muttering picks up veil. Maybe? It sounds like a goodbye, or maybe he's just done with the bishop's nonsense. You're starting to think these whispers are his way of letting go, like saving a file before closing it. The morning light fills the room, and the workshop feels open, like it's ready to release you. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady nodding pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a story ready to travel. You're still in Thomas's workshop, but it's softer now, like a room you've known your whole life, its edges blurred by the morning light streaming through the window. The air carries the faint scent of polished wood and fading ink, like a library after a quiet rain. The stool beneath you creaks, but it's a gentle sound now, like an old chair settling into a story. Thomas is at his table, packing the wrapped book into a wooden box lined with straw. His movements careful but relaxed, like a parent tucking in a child. You stretch, your body loose and heavy, and feel the workshop's hold slipping, as if it's ready to nudge you out the door. This place is like a song you've hummed too long, familiar yet ready to end. Its melody lingering in your bones. You watch Thomas nestle the book into the straw, the box's lid waiting open like a yawn. Here's your historical fact. In the late 14th century, bookbinders often used custom wooden boxes or satchels to transport manuscripts, protecting them from rough journeys and ensuring they arrived pristine for patrons. It's like medieval FedEx, but with more splinters and fewer tracking numbers. This box is for the bishop, who Thomas mutters, expects it delivered like it's Christ's own diary. You grin, imagining the bishop opening it with the reverence of a kid unboxing a new gadget. Thomas catches your smirk and huffs. Laugh now, he says, but his gold's what keeps my roof from leaking. You nod, but you're already picturing the bishop fumbling the box like it's a hot potato. You spot a small bundle of twine on the table, rough and knotted, lying next to a tiny wax seal. Thomas presses the seal into the twine, marking the box's closure. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders used wax seals with unique symbols to authenticate their work, like a medieval signature or brand logo, sometimes believed to carry a protective charm. It's like slapping a certified authentic sticker on your Etsy order, but with a hint of magic. You wonder if Thomas trusts the seal's power or just likes the extra flair. Historians still debate whether these seals were purely practical or imbued with superstitious meaning to guard the book's journey. You're leaning toward practicality. Thomas seems more about results than rituals. You shift, and the stool offers a soft creak, almost affectionate now, like it's saying goodbye. Still loitering? Thomas says, glancing up with a wry grin. You're worse than a monk dodging vespers. You chuckle, but your eyes drift to the window. The alley's fully awake now, bathed in morning light. Its cobbles bustling with early risers, vendors calling, a donkey braying. Remember that eerie fog and its tricks? It's gone, replaced by the ordinary hum of Oxford waking up, like a server rebooting after a crash. Your pulse steadies, like you just closed a spooky tab on your browser. Looks normal out there, you say, testing the air. Thomas smirks, tying the twine. Normal is just a mask, he says. Don't trust it too far. You nod, but you're starting to think the alley's just a street now. Its mysteries swept away by the sun. You stand, your legs solid as a well-bound spine, and wander to a shelf where a stack of vellum scraps rests, one marked with a tiny cross, simple and worn, like a note left in the margins. It's comforting, like finding a bookmark in a favorite novel. You touch it, and Thomas doesn't bark, which feels like a quiet blessing. His twine rustles softly, and you catch his muttering viator, maybe? It sounds like he's talking about a traveler, or maybe just wishing the bishop's delivery goes smoothly. You're starting to think these whispers are his way of sending the book off, like a captain wishing a ship fair winds. The morning light fills the room, and the workshop feels open, like it's ready to let you slip away. You sink back onto the stool, ignoring its creak, and let Thomas's steady packing pull you back into this world, where every book feels like a journey about to begin. You're still in the workshop, but it's different now, like a stage after the play's ended. Props still in place, but the energy fading. The air is light, carrying the scent of straw and polished leather, like a barn crossed with a bookshop. The morning light pours through the window, bright and clear, making the shelves glow like they're ready to retire. The stool beneath you creaks softly, a final grumble from an old friend who's done its duty. Thomas is at his table, closing the wooden box with a gentle thud, his hands lingering on the lid like he's saying goodbye to a piece of himself. You stretch, your body calm and weightless, and feel the workshop spell dissolve, like mist burning off a river. This place is like a book you just finished, its story complete, but still echoing in your mind. You watch Thomas slide a final cord around the box, tying it with a knot that's both practical and proud, like a sailor securing a sail. Here's your historical fact. By the late 14th century, the book trade had become a vital part of urban economies, with binders like Thomas forming guilds to regulate quality and protect their craft. It's like medieval Etsy, but with stricter rules and more parchment. This book's headed to the bishop, who Thomas says will probably parade it like a relic. You grin, imagining the bishop carting it through the cathedral like it's a trophy. Thomas catches your grin and snorts. You'd laugh less if you had to deal with his sermons, he says. You nod, but you're already picturing the bishop tripping over his robes, box in hand. You notice a small cloth sack on the table, filled with what looks like dried petals, rose maybe, or chamomile. Thomas tucks it into the box's corner, nestling it beside the book. This is your obscure tidbit. Some binders included dried flowers or herbs in delivery boxes, believing they'd preserve the book or bring good fortune to its journey. It's like slipping a lucky charm into a package, just in case the postman's cursed. You wonder if Thomas believes in the luck or just wants the book to smell nice. Historians still debate whether these herbs were for preservation or part of a ritual to bless the book as travels. You're leaning toward preservation. Thomas seems too practical for flower magic. You shift, and the stool offers a faint creak, like a sigh of relief. You're still here? Thomas says, raising an eyebrow. Thought you'd be off chasing daylight by now. You chuckle, but your eyes flick to the window. The alley's alive now, filled with the clatter of carts and the chatter of passers-by, its mysteries washed away by the morning's bustle. Remember that cross you saw on the vellum scrap? It's stuck in your mind, like a logo from a dream you've already half forgotten. Your heart's calm, like you've just logged out of a stressful app. It's quiet out there, you say, almost to yourself. Thomas smirks, securing the cord. Quiet's just the world catching its breath, he says. Don't get too cozy. You nod, but you're starting to think the alley's just a street now, its secrets carried off by the dawn. You stand, your legs steady as a finished manuscript, and wander to a corner where a lone V. System. You touch the last vellum scrap, marked with that tiny cross, and it feels like a final nod from this world. Thomas doesn't stop you, his focus on the box, muttering something soft-finished maybe. It sounds like an ending, or maybe he's just done with the day. You're starting to think these whispers are his way of closing chapters, like saving a file for the last time. The morning light floods the room, warm and golden, and the workshop feels like it's ready to release you, a story told to its end. You sink back onto the stool, its creak now a soft farewell, and let Thomas's final knot-tying pull you gently out of this world, where every book is a journey, complete and ready to rest.